So, what I can say in the meantime is what I would like to do is bring together these various presentations because we've had a few different topics, and we can bring them together and then open. I'll try to basically highlight what are the common and future opportunities that we may have, and discuss them with this panel, this great group of presenters. So, are we able to go to the next one? Okay, thank you. So, essentially, what I would like to do is bring, open up to future opportunities that we have for audio for video, which is the theme of this workshop. If we go to the next slide, we're going to see my title. Oh, sorry, I'm the one who's responsible for this. So, so the idea is to make to allow to support versatile soundtracks in various scenarios in how they are generated and consumed. So, what I would like to do is basically bring what this futuristic direction of where these various formats and technologies can take us in the future. I'm Jean-Marc Jot. I established this LLC, Virtual Works, to try to accelerate this kind of process and evolution. And I'll talk a little bit, much of what I'm thinking is influenced by this recent publication called that has this term acoustic objects in the title, that is intending to bridge and unify distribution and creation systems. In what way? One element of it is that at the moment, when creating an immersive audio experience, we are in an industry, in a situation where it's either going to be interactive or it's going to be linear, but the tools we're going to use for the two kinds of experience are not the same. Is there something we can do to address this problem so that, at the end result for the consumer is it's immersive audio anyway. It should sound natural. It should sound externalized. If you're listening on headphones, like Deep explained, is there a way that we could imagine creating these two types of content in a manner that's unified for our industry? Another situation we have is that there are applications where the content that's being created is driven by aesthetic agenda, and other situations where it's driven by a physical simulation of a real world. So then again, like for games or virtual reality, it's typically going to be a bias towards simulating a physics environment. But for music or soundtrack, movie soundtrack, it's going to be more aesthetically driven. Is there something we can do to try to unify these two worlds? So in this publication, I'm proposing this concept of acoustic objects and transmitting them and creating them and distributing them in a manner that's more unified between these various types of things. So going to I'd like to ask to start with a theme of this discussion, which is opportunities, things that we would like to be able to do in the future. So here's an example. We're in the audio for video session, and we would like to be able to produce video, and we know not too far from today, in fact this company, the AI, makes that possible, that I'm not going to be able to demonstrate right now, but you can imagine watching this video in a web browser and being able to move around inside this video, change your orientation, but even get closer to certain elements that are being presented. What would be the audio experience that complements a video experience like that, where you can choose your viewpoint and you can navigate, or you can walk around? Today, in our typical expectation, we have a mix that does not change when we move around. But when we imagine an application such as what Deep was representing, we would have virtual reality headset or Pro, and we would be able to walk around during the playback of the scene. And so one thing we could do is get close to one of the instrumentists, and the mix should change adaptively according to that. So that's an application that would be potentially quite exciting if we were able to do that. But at the moment, it's not possible. Here's another application that is essentially a prolongation of the talk that Jessica gave this morning, which is we're playing a music recording and in real time being able to separate the stems and DJ this content. And that's now possible thanks to source separation technology. So you can imagine that you take a recording, it's being distributed, and someone will, upon reception, break it up, have the opportunity of remix it in real time, like in a DJ application, for instance. And lastly, here's another example. Take a movie soundtrack or a podcast. We're entering a world where AI, technology that enables free viewpoint video, for instance, it's going to be possible to replace in real time the language of the characters in the soundtrack. To do this, that's a very exciting potential application in the future where upon reception, a consumer listens to the podcast or the movie soundtrack in the language that they choose, that may not have been even considered or taken into account at the original production of the content. Right? In other words, dubbing may not have been performed in the original production, but might be done in real time at consumption. So that's another kind of application that we can envision in the future that's going to be enabled. We are in the future. We are in this world right now because of the evolution of the audio technology and artificial intelligence. We're going to be able to navigate in a video, and the question is going to be, what's the sound experience that goes with that? We're going to be able to change the language in real time at playback, and what would be necessary to make this possible in the future form. So I'd like to open this kind of perspective and basically start with thoughts that maybe our panel could have related to that, and how it relates to maybe some of the things you presented this morning, and then maybe I'll open the discussion with the whole audience. So maybe can I start with some of you? Would you be interested in taking the next step in this perspective? Like, there's an element that is source separation. There's an element that's immersive audio. There's an element that's coding immersive audio. So maybe, Jessica, is that something that comes to mind?
Sure. I mean, I think there's a bunch of different directions this could go in. I think one thing that's interesting to me, just looking over the past 3 or 4 years that we've been operating and seeing the different formats that have emerged for immersive, I think one of the, it's a very interesting philosophical question, right? Of if we believe that at some point in the future, we are increasingly going to be living in or accessing virtual environments as a way to experience media. You can go super dystopian and think that we're all hooked up to some sort of thing. Or you just say as an entertainment device. So take it however you want. But if the point is that we want to be able to consume content in an immersive format, then you say, okay, well, where's that content coming from? And what I think today is interesting is that there's a relative lack of content, right? Because so much content is produced in ways that it cannot be made immersive easily and cheaply. And I think that, if you look at something like Atmos or Apple and so forth, there's interest, I completely understand the desire to curate what can be on a platform and so forth, but that does mean then that you have a lot less content. So you have a lot of high quality content, but it does mean that a huge amount of content that people consume, like say TikTok, right, where like a huge amount of time that people spend consuming content is not created in any way that will be anytime soon made immersive. And then you look at other formats that have emerged, like say like an Eclipse or something like that, which is I think a little more permissive. You can pipe in. I'm just trying to tee up a question for you basically, where more kinds of content can be created. So I think it's an interesting time. Ultimately, I would imagine that we will trend towards make all content immersive, and you will have, just like you do on YouTube, you will have really premium content, and you will have stuff that is automatically mixed. It can still be great, but may not be the same richness, just like the differences we see in watching a clip that was recorded on a phone and a clip that was, something that we see in the movie theater. So I think that is where we will end up. And yes, I think everything that you were talking about, and then the kind of work that we do around, being able to separate, again, whether it's in post or whether it's in real time, it does seem inevitable to me that we're going to want to be able to have this content available, and that we're going to need technology that on the fly can make that possible. And I think the part about the physics and the aesthetic, that's a very interesting point as well.
At the same time, I would not advocate for upmixing, because at the moment it just does not work. I mean, we need original content created immersively. But on the other hand, your tools could be useful for isolating some elements that could be then put into an immersive mix more effectively than what we have at the moment. So that, that for me is a positive, but I still think we need to create more original material that's specifically for immersive. Even a music recording, I think of it really immersively from the very start. And yes, I monitor binaurally, but the end result is something I always have in mind.
When it comes to these kind of visions that Jean-Marc is talking about, where you change on the fly, but it's for me because we have a delivery system, and the question is, what should we deliver if you're doing at the end point? I mean, if it's interactive, what should you transmit to the other side? So in this case, we need to transmit enough information for the scene changer if you want to be up on stage and change a little bit, transmit what it is. Another thing when you said that example is like, hey, if you go see a live show, do you really want to be up on stage and hear only the guitar and like the monitors? Like, I mean, we have a dedicated sound engineer. Of course, if you go to a live show, if you walk around, you will be closer to the guitar. So, but I mean, it's not dramatic. It's not like and it's the same thing like when people do these VR things and it's like, oh, you can go up and be inside the orchestra. I don't know if I want to sit next to a trumpet in a symphonic orchestra.
Yeah, me neither.
So yeah, you can do all these things, but it's more like toys for me. Like it's if you want the immersive thing, you just have to be sure that it's still plausible and kind of perceptually pleased. I mean, you get pleased by the experience. So yeah, you can play around with these toys, but I feel like in the end of the day, there is especially in linear, there is a lot of sound engineers involved, and they have a mix that it's actually pretty good. It's not too much you can want to do with it. Of course, personalization, yeah, you want some like higher, lower mid and so on, but like to a reasonable degree. Just sitting next to the hi-hats, I mean, it's not so fun.
Well, there are now tools in MPEG-H that allow for some amount of user intervention, but it's always constrained, and that's what the engineers think of, and that to me is a positive. I mean, usually for bringing up dialogue.
Yeah, so that's basically what we aim for in Eclipse or IMF, to make, you want to maintain the creative intent. So we want both sides to be happy. So that's kind of a trade-off.
I think, so I don't disagree with anything that's said, but I think if we are thinking about sound, I think a lot of us in the workflows that we have, we're typically working with really high quality content, like really high quality media content. But there's, I think we also should just acknowledge that there's a world of content outside of media or entertainment that I think people would absolutely consume in an immersive format if it was made available. Think about some of the stuff that is happening in the US right now, right? Wherever your brain goes, I guarantee you there are many people that would have really wanted to see certain recordings and seen them up close and been able to dive closer into what was happening. You think about some of the traction that, say, VR has been on the educational, psychological, like empathy kind of type trainings. I think there's a whole bunch of content that is never going to have the budget, or that the creators are not going to have the expertise to be able to create like a lot of people in this room or the people that we work with. And I think that's where there will be tools or platforms where, or just think of like, if you were Reality Labs, like Meta's not up here, but you have all of this content that you are, beautiful premium content that you're using to pull people into this world. But man, wouldn't it be kind of amazing in some future state where more people are in some VR environment, if you could take everything that people are producing on Instagram Reels or in other things. Again, whether it's on the fly or it's delayed, I think that's actually less of an issue. But I do think it's inevitable. And I think that, again, there will be quality differences, but I think it's rare that when you give people a chance to be more proximate to an experience, maybe minus the trumpet and all that, I totally agree with you on that. I think there'd be a lot of people that would want that.
Thank you. Yeah, one example that I think is relevant to think about is sport events, where when we think of free viewpoint video, when we can actually attend a sport event, we can pick we would like to be able to essentially, potentially, there could be an experience where it's as if it were captured with a drone flying over the pitch, if it's a soccer game. Imagine, so that is something that we can envision. It's going to be possible not too far from today. Pretty soon, being able to actually broadcast a sport event and allow the consumer to basically fly around and pick their, essentially broadcast that experience like a free viewpoint video. And I think it brings the question of whether, if you take this live broadcast experience of that kind, and you're going to experience it, say, in a VR headset like the Apple Vision Pro, wouldn't it be useful to be able to experience a sound scene that matches what you're seeing?
Absolutely.
And what would be some of the technologies you're working on, and whether it's capture or source separation or coding, do you see that as an exciting future for the technologies that you're developing?
Oh, absolutely, yes. And I see this with live concerts as well. Maybe not going so much into the group, but certainly being able to have a constrained sphere arc of motion, maybe, and even going a little bit above. You know,
because everyone, when you're on the live, even in the stadium, I mean, it is, even if you're just looking down at the artist, it is extremely immersive events because of the room, and you get people behind you talking and all that. So having that, and then like moving around, or maybe turning around and hearing that voice, and get the sound from the stage by head tracking, or moving to another place. That's pretty cool, and I think that's doable with today's technology already.
Now, one question I have for all the developers, and this also goes with the immersive formats, is: are we going to have better compression, lossless compression? Because I know with Atmos, there are 96K projects already. How feasible is that in today's market with today's bandwidth and transmission?
Is there, for instance, if thinking about source separation technology, Jessica, is there potentially an interest in using technologies such as your company's technology to sort of upgrade capture such a way that it can be then broadcast in a manner that perhaps using Eclipsa or other tools, it could be experienced with this kind of richer audio experience? And I think source separation could play a role there.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think depending on how we're defining what that upresing is, I think that, yeah, I think it would depend on how you define the question. But yes, as a starting point, absolutely. Maybe it's within a certain reason, but yeah.
I mean, we still have that. I use that every week in Isotope RX, and I'll take a sample of ambience and then use that on a whole file, and that's an amazing amount of noise reduction right there, and it actually makes the source sound louder, even though it's not.
Maybe I should open up the floor to questions from the audience as well. We have a few minutes left before we have about 10 minutes.
So I think there's a very interesting set of tools here, and experience as well. Sorry, the assumption is, that there is no control in a UGC captured scene, right? But that's just not true, right? So if you were to look at a cell phone capture of a concert, right? There's first off a hell of a lot of resolution in there that's not used in everyday usage today, right? That enables the pipeline that Jan and his team have been able to achieve with kind of upscaling of that content automatically. The information's there, it's just not necessarily being used. And the determination of, well, I don't want to walk close to the trumpets. Okay, well, there's a solution right here, right? So if you've got a situation where you're separating out all of the individual elements, then surely we can build a solution where it's dynamically controlling the output of that video, right? So if I'm getting too close to the trumpets, great, let's lower the trumpets so it feels more like the reference location rather than a problem. It becomes a solution and an interactivity game. So I think there's a really fascinating set of solutions that can be determined here.
And this also applies for microphone modeling. I mean, there's several units out there that can emulate studio mics, but okay, what about we end up with a microphone that's too bright? Okay, the trumpets are coming out like this. Can we have something that is not like throwing a blanket of EQ over the mic, but something which is more organic and integrated?
I'm also wondering, before I ask the audience again, I'm also wondering about, to follow your comment, walking close to the trumpet, maybe some consumers who are experiencing the experience would like to do it, and others would prefer to stay put at a different position. So the interactivity can be leave enough freedom to the spectator so that they choose their experience, or free viewpoint video or other kind of...
Yeah, exactly. That was what I was hoping to say. That it's doable, but it's like the same thing when you started using Word with different fonts and colors. I mean, you write in the beginning, you think it's, oh, this is so cool, and then in the end you feel like this is just noise. So I mean, yeah. But of course, we should not restrict them. It's just that I feel like there must be other applications which is more useful than just hearing a trumpet.
Well, we already see that in Instagram filters too. The ones that are overused.
We have a few more minutes. Is there any other question from the audience?
Just a comment to all of this. It does seem that the ability, let's say, to make the trumpets too loud, if that's the way the mic positioning happens to be at a given moment, there's some friction between that and the artistry of the mixer who's trying to create a beautiful sound picture. So balancing that out is going to be pretty tricky. I can see where the user might want to do some things, but they'd be well able, I think, as being said here, to botch it up and not realize it and be listening to something.
Or just constrain the amount of control.
Yeah.
As I mentioned with the MPEG-H and the dialogue. You know, you don't want to bring it up all the way, but
The dialogue
More.
for sure, you know.
Yeah.
I think it's-
Everybody's got subtitles on, and it's a huge issue.
who wants to watch a game with subtitles, please?
all of Gen Z. It's true. I think you already see that, right, with Atmos mixing, right? Like the question around what was the artistic intent. And I remember when I started, and again, there's people in this room that do this every single day, but I remember the first Atmos mixes that I would hear where mixers were just so excited to have like separations. This was Carrie's job, that they would just like throw that vocal around the room because they could, you know?
Yeah.
And then you saw like a little bit of artist backlash around that because that didn't reflect the original mix. So I think we already have those kinds of issues today. At the same time, and I think you were alluding to this, there are a ton of accessibility type applications around, because you have this with film too, right? What was the director's choice in mixing this, like in how this film was mixed, and that the fact that the explosions are super loud, but then you have consumers saying, that's great, but I just can't hear what people are saying.
Oppenheimer.
Yeah, so I think that my guess is that you have what is sort of the approved version going out, but there's probably like a lot that will happen on the interactivity side.
Spent a lot of years working in different aspects of pro audio, and I had a conversation with a guy named Fred Aldous, who was the leading sports A1 for many years. I believe he's retired now. But I asked him, sitting in his truck one time as the NFL game was coming up the next day, what the biggest complaint was. And nobody here would have to think very hard to come up with what it was. They get calls all the time, I can't hear the announcer. And, you know, I think sitting in the truck, there's the excitement of the crowd, and I think a natural understanding of instinct on the part of the mixer. But anyway, it was far and away the thing that everybody complained about. The commentator. So, anyway.
It seems clear that it's important to give the creator some control over what the spectator is going to be allowed to do with their content. So this kind of technology would need to also carry that kind of information to basically carry to what extent and what modifications the spectator is authorized to apply.
Well, even now with an immersive mix, we don't have just one sweet spot. We can walk around a little bit and get different perspectives. So I think people's listening expectations are different, and us who are gathering need to also take that into account.
Yeah?
Hi, Frank. We focus on placing this object all over the space and everything, but I'm still not convinced on binaural. There's still some dark art going on there to try to, get an HRTF or whatever different device are using for getting the binaural right. And I don't see anybody focusing on that or, giving an explanation. When you go on Apple, they take a picture of your head and it's done for you, but you don't know it's really done, if it could be done better. I'd love to be able to go in a room where they record, with the earphone in my ear and then feel really if the binaural is working well or not. So I think this is an area we are talking about, creating the content, but delivering to the person is still a little bit magic.
Too bad Abdeep is not here, because if you saw his talk, the entire workflow is for VR headsets.
Yeah,
So they have designed the codec and all the cues and all the parameters to have optimized it for that. So they might have some knowledge, but it's Apple.
I'm
so
still
we will
not
never know.
fully happy with the binaural that Apple Music is rendering. So there you go.
Hello, my name is Sean. So I'm a software developer, and coming from that point of view, this discussion is very useful because when you list these types of topics, this is a very high-level point of view, but when you list these types of topics, you essentially take the problems that exist in audio video and the various dimensions that already exist about how you can decompose a problem, and you're adding a few additional axes. One of them is the free viewpoint video. versus fixed, versus is it continuous versus just a few discrete points. And I love seeing this type of discussion because it gives that type of framework to start thinking and decomposing these types of problems. So I just want to make that comment here. It's not my mind.
Yes.
To be honest, sound is easier to interpolate because we have much longer wavelengths than viewpoints with camera. So it's naturally kind of smoother.
I think I can speak loudly. From some of the feedback that you've given, it seems like also these have to be tightly coupled to real-world applications so that they have maximum value and don't turn into just toys, but actually have these core use cases. So features like accessibility, for example. And also I'd love to see things where, when you want to see Neil Peart playing just the drums and just hearing a drum track, audio separation is now possible. So these types of things, I think, come with these types of things.
But one interesting thing to consider is that I was talking earlier about microphones and the very narrow polar patterns. Well, think of camera lenses. They have much more specificity, a long telephoto lens, and also depth of field. It doesn't exist with microphones, but it does with cameras. Very interesting.
I think we're running out of time for this sessions, but thank you so much for your responses, and thank you for this panel, for your thoughts, sharing your thoughts about all these topics. And I'll let Brian conclude the session.
Voila. Thank you. Jean-Marc, thank you so much. Jan, Jessica, David, and Deep, even though he's not with us.